Welcome back. Well, I've been out working in the yard lately, and this is what I do in the summer when I'm not making videos is try to deal with the yard. Well, at the best of times, the yard was a challenge. It is a third of an acre. Keep in mind, I grew up in the city, in Boston, in fact, where if you say I have a third of an acre to a Bostonian, they want to know when you're starting your cattle ranch. A third of an acre is a lot more than most Bostonians can wrap their heads around. A third of a lot is big in Boston. So this is sort of the vast wilderness for me. When the tree came down on the schoolhouse, though, it presented a whole bunch of new challenges to the yard. So I thought today we would talk about landscaping when we come back. Okay, landscaping. I do not know a lot about landscaping. Landscaping, in my opinion, is something that happens when people have vast amounts of land. You don't see that in New England cities. They are not known for their vast tracts of open land. There we go. That picture above my head is Boston Public Gardens, the Swan Boats. When you live in Boston, that's your idea of vast open tracts of land. It's like a public park somewhere. It's generally not your own backyard, not your own responsibility. But I'm learning fast. What happened was, when the tree came down, hit the schoolhouse, not only did it leave a giant depression in the backyard from where big chunks of tree root, I'm assuming, came out and went off, but there was a tremendous amount of heavy equipment. Those of you who were following the channel then, I'm sure saw the photos of some of this really, really heavy equipment that was brought in. It was all over the place. So in addition to the giant crater of the X tree, there were ruts and depressions and heaven only knows what else from all of the equipment that came in. And then on top of that, we've had contractors working on the schoolhouse. And that means big trucks dropping off things like roof trusses. Roof trusses, by the way, are very big. Just even for a building as small as the schoolhouse, that's still something that is about 30 feet long at the widest point, and then the peak is probably about 12 feet. These are big, big things. And big trucks came in to the yard. I don't just mean came down the street. When they came in, it was like into the yard, dropped that stuff off. So now I am looking at the aftermath. And keep in mind that this was not a beautiful yard to begin with. The schoolhouse had been a schoolhouse, and that means for the earliest part of its existence, in the 1850s, nobody knew lawn. What was a lawn? It was just green weeds that were kept short by the sheep grazing on it. Like, seriously. The very idea of a manicured lawn wasn't even coming into vogue then. So who knows what it looked like 170 years ago. Later, it was a church building. Later, it was actually a machine shop for a period where I don't imagine a well-manicured lawn was a very big deal. So mostly what it is green weeds that I just kept to a reasonable level by running the lawnmower through them. What can I say? At this point, that's just not working anymore. For one thing, it's very hard to take a lawnmower through the backyard, which now looks like, downtown Beirut after, a bombing. It's just crater, crater, crater. It's unbelievable. So I have some film because I don't want you to just have to take my word for it. But it's sort of a global picture of a third of an acre of bombed out wilderness that needs to be dealt with. So I am bringing in a landscaper to deal with it. Now, here's my theory, and those of you who have large yards are probably going to be sitting back and laughing your butts off over this, but still, my theory, I'm going to share it with you. I figure if I get a good landscaper in, get a good landscaping plan, and get grass where grass is supposed to be, and get the weeds that are not supposed to be there off somewhere else, and have mostly low maintenance plants, I can probably deal with it. That's my hope anyway. All right. Like I say, those of you with big yards are probably just laughing, saying, yeah, right, that's what a person from Boston thinks. I don't know. We'll see. So in any event, that's where we are at right now. So I have been talking to landscapers. And why don't we start by taking a look first at some clips of what we have to start with. Well, I thought we would go outside and take a look at the yard. And we've started with the daylilies. I have carted these daylilies with me, through 4 or 5 states, and they are now finally in their permanent home. That is a witch hazel that definitely needs to be tidied up. And this is the rather pathetic lawn with shrubs. Let's come over here and take a look at Lazarus. Lazarus is a small pine sapling that was given to me by my neighbor. And when I first put him in the ground, my plumber ran over him with his truck. Poor Lazarus got flattened like a little pancake, but he survived. And actually, it was like 2 winters in a row I thought he hadn't made it. So whenever winter would come around, I would mulch him up and I would just do what I could to improve his chances. And he took full advantage of it. So let's come in a little closer. For those of you who are unfamiliar with evergreens, they have a leader. That is this piece right here. And that is the one branch that goes straight up and constitutes the center of the tree. And of course, in Lazarus's case, his leader got squished like a pancake, just like the rest of him here. If we kind of look down on him, you can see he's not quite round yet. Definitely not as flat as he used to be. Not by a long shot, in fact. But he's getting there. So the reason he has the little stake, and he is staked up on this is in the hopes of giving him the best possible shot of growing straight and tall like his friends. These are his friends, and they are doing beautifully. They too came into my yard as little saplings from the same neighbor. They have a lot of evergreens in their yard, and every now and then their trees will just throw a little baby, and they bring it over here. I've got 3 of them now, and these 2 are doing really nice. So, I'm going to go over here, and this is the main road that you can see going across here behind my neighbor's garage. So when we are filming and we hear dreadful loud noises, it's because we've got a main road very close by. So, let's take a look. This is my little back road, which, by the way, does not have a name. I don't know what it is, but there is no name here. So, we'll go around the other side and take a look at the other road, the road that my schoolhouse is on. Right now, we are just looking at the yard. The yard was brutalized by the tree that fell, all of the equipment that came through, things like this where the construction workers left piles of wood, etc. Some of this is actually grass. Most of it is weeds. As we go back here, we start to see the worst of the problems. Right here is where debris from the schoolhouse landed, because this was the corner that was taken down. And as you can see, it's been rebuilt. We do have most of that shutter, and I rebuilt those shutters myself, so I know how they go together, and I am fairly certain that I'm going to be able to rebuild what's left of the former shutter and get it up there. Fingers crossed. Alright, as we move out here, again, sort of grass. Okay, let's take a quick peek in here. Those eggs are vulture eggs. The vultures abandoned their nest. The fellow from the wildlife agency came out and set up this as an alternative nest. That's a piece of the deceased chimney, and I think I'm going to have to call the office and let them know they can come and get whatever it is that they have going here, and because the vultures are not coming back. The backyard here is full of ruts and heaven only knows what else. Alright, as we move up, this is the companion tree to the tree that fell. By the way, I'm literally holding the camera straight up in the air at this point. This is what the original tree looked like, the one that fell. And as you can see, there is a tree behind it. Same thing. Now we're going to go over here. This is where the ex-tree lived. Now, it's very careful over here. This is the crater that was left behind when the tree was taken out. As you can see, weeds have invaded. It's a mess. It's almost impossible to even get a lawnmower through this area because it's not just this, which is the worst of the craters. I'm going to go take a peek around here. This whole area had heavy equipment running through, and it's full of ruts and depressions. It's just absolutely ghastly. I don't think there are 3 feet together of level ground out here anymore. Well, this is the area next to the schoolhouse. Here's the schoolhouse. And this is where all of the bricks fell, where the tree landed. It's just a complete mess. What we have over here, and pardon the shaky camera, I am literally supporting myself on the side of the schoolhouse wall because this is very dangerous terrain. We have piles of, I'm assuming that is brick mortar there. It's just a complete mess. This area is the most problematic area in my yard. I have 2 trees here. There's one. Let's go over and see the other one. These are aspens. Aspens are troublesome trees. They drop pitch-covered blossoms in the spring. And believe me, you get that stuff on, you don't get it off. That's one of those, boy, every spring you just need to leave your shoes outside. And yes, baby. And they also have roots on the surface. So if you have aspens in your yard, you have a whole area you can't go near. You can't put grass here because you'll see roots on the surface. Coming over, here's another one on the surface. Same over here. You just can't get in close to these trees. So, aspens, by the way, as a bit of trivia, the largest living thing on this planet is a forest, somewhere out in the Midwest, I don't recall where, that is comprised of one single aspen tree, because the way they reproduce is from their roots. That area right there, where you can see the greenery coming up, that is determined to become a new aspen tree. Like I say, whole forest, basically one tree. My neighbor across the street in this house remembers the trees from when she was a very little girl and they were fully grown. So, by the way, she was born in that house, so she's been there forever. And aspens have a life expectancy of approximately 70 years. My neighbor's hard on 80, so I'm thinking they are coming to the end of their life expectancy, which means I'm going to have to eventually do something about these trees, but not today, thank goodness. Okay, so that's sort of a bunch of little clips spliced together. The reason I did that, by the way, is you can't walk around the yard with a camera. For one thing, if you don't actually pay very close attention to where you are putting your feet, you are going to fall on your face. No question about it. There are like ruts and holes, and not just ruts and holes, but bricks from the schoolhouse and bits of wood and all kinds of stuff that's still, cluttered around there. So it's sort of an adventure. And of course, I want you to see how big the trees are. So when I say a tree fell on my schoolhouse, a tree, they say words don't have meanings, people do. So if I say tree to you, I'm not sure what that means to you. To me, it means a 40-foot, 200-year-old oak tree. means something massive, because when I think tree, I remember it falling on the schoolhouse. So this was just, frankly, disastrous. And you can see the two remaining trees. Well, there are 3 trees in all. 2 of them are in my yard. 1 is in my neighbor's yard. They were originally used to pluck out the piece of land that was attached to the schoolhouse, and the trees were the property line. Apparently there was a 5th tree that had been removed, Lord only knows when, long before I moved here. As nearly as I can tell, it was something like 30 years ago that tree was removed. One of my neighbors across the street was born in the house across the street, and she's hard on 80 now, so she has some pretty good recollections of the neighborhood trees. And that was something that she remembers from a long time ago. So this is the sort of the process that I want to go through with you, because I figure we can, for one thing, we can demystify the process of bringing in a landscaper. We can talk about things like costs or what expectations are, etc. So I've already spoken with 2 landscapers. One of them, and I think he's the one I'm going to go with, is just a little over a half a mile from here. That's very convenient. This is his neighborhood, obviously. And so he knows whatever one needs to know about the local conditions. He knows what will grow here. He certainly knows what you can expect from the sunny side of the street, the shady side of the street, etc. He is doing up a plan, which is good. I like that. I like plans. And it's probably going to involve removing a lot of the stuff that is behind the schoolhouse, that brick and mortar mess that just got dumped there as a result of the work that was done. Get that stuff out of there, replace it with topsoil, and put grass in. I'm not a big fan of grass, to be perfectly honest. Grass does nothing for me. It's green stuff. I don't golf, and I'm not sure. Oh, croquet, that's another one you play on grass. I do not play grass sports. So grass, it holds no thrill for me. But I will admit that grass is relatively easy to maintain if you have fairly nicely mulched areas around your plantings and around your buildings, and you just run your lawnmower back and forth through the grass. I know, this is my theory. It shows you what I know. So what I'm hoping for is some large expanses of grass, because this is a very grass neighborhood. And I do think that when you live in a neighborhood, your house, your landscaping, whatever, should be at least reasonably consistent with what's going on in the neighborhood. If a lot of your neighbors have very heavily landscaped properties, then you're going to want to do that. If it's mostly just a lot of grass, a couple of trees, and some flower beds, then that's all you're really going to want to do. I'm not saying that you can't do it. It's just that there's a certain character to a neighborhood. And I think most neighborhoods are a little better. They show a little better when everyone in the neighborhood has the same sort of sensibility. We have a neighbor about a quarter of a mile up the road who is a gardener. And she has the most incredible stand of daylilies. It's just beautiful. I just walk up there sometimes just to look at her daylilies. And she has roses and this and that. Not here. I don't have the time or energy to put into that. But daylilies are very low maintenance, so my daylilies are going to stay because they look good for minimal effort. You get the daylilies planted, they choke out all the weeds, they big green leaves come up, and then pretty flowers, and hey, that's it. And that's mostly what I am looking at, a landscape plan that's going to involve a lot of reasonably flat areas that are not difficult to mow, and mulch in areas that would be difficult to mow around the hedges and whatever around the trees, so that I'm not mowing plants, or I'm not banging the lawnmower into a brick wall. Yeah, that's definitely just about my speed, banging it into the wall. So the first step was recognizing that I can't do this myself. I really can't. Last year, I let things go to pot. I had knee replacement surgery in the fall, and going up to the surgery date, my knee was shot. I was really not getting around as well as I would have liked, and I certainly was not able to get down on my hands and knees and do any weeding. Well, it's changing, new knee, a lot of things I can do now. It's great, but I'm still paying for the neglect of the yard from last year. So my plan for this is somebody's got to come in, de-weed it, and I don't care how that's done. I don't care if they dump a whole bunch of chemicals in it, and I'm sorry to say it, but ordinarily I do not care for the idea of pouring chemicals and contaminating the groundwater and whatnot, but I'm desperate. And believe me, things that you wouldn't have thought would be acceptable suddenly become very acceptable when your desperation levels go high enough. And I have a serious mess, as you saw. So I don't have a lot of choice. Something's got to be done. I would imagine they're going to be digging out a lot of that backyard and rearranging it. Maybe they'll take the high spots out and throw them into the low spots. I'm not really sure. Fortunately, someone else is doing that. So what I need to do, my part of the process, is I have to get it into my head, basically what I want. What I want is low maintenance. And I have to recognize that low maintenance means sacrifices. And you can't have everything. It's what's that expression? You can have anything you want, but you can't have everything you want. Of course, I would love pretty and beautiful and la la la. Oh yeah, wouldn't that be great? But I also want low maintenance, and those two things clash. So my first choice is low maintenance. And that is because I would like to continue to take care of my yard for as long as I can do it myself. And I have to recognize that I've got limits. First of all, the whole idea of a third of an acre, and I know those of you who are in the city understand what I'm talking about. It's just plain hard to wrap my head around that. Just looking out, and I'm just like, oh, look at this vast wilderness. And your first thought when you look at a yard is vast, oh, it's mine, all mine. And your second thought is, oh my God, this is all mine. This is my responsibility. I have to deal with this. So low maintenance is number one. I told the landscaper that if I had my way, we'd just mulch the whole thing, and that would be it. Maybe astroturf. But obviously we can't do that. But we are going to mulch around any areas that are around trees, because of course we have to get in there and do the cutting and things like that. We need to mulch around the buildings, make sure that whatever goes in there. Oh, and by the way, I'm not looking at every square inch of that mulch being covered with plants. I am looking at every square inch of that mulch being covered with mulch. If we start putting in plants, we will do that very, very gradually over time. The kind of plants that I am looking at bringing in, and now I am in South Central Pennsylvania, keep that in mind. Daylilies. I like the plain orange daylilies, Hemerocallis vulva, that's the actual Latin name. They're often called ditch lilies. They're just plain orange daylilies. I love those. I remember them from my childhood. They just sort of grew wild along the roadsides. I love them. I have a few little varieties here and there that are a little fancier, a little red one here, a little yellow one somewhere else. But by and large, it's the orange daylilies. I love them. So I'm not sorry to be using workhorse plants like that. They do well in shade. Much of my yard is in shade. They do well in sun. The part of my yard that's not in shade is in sun. Duh. And hostas. Hostas are easy care. They do well in deep shade. That's going to be great for around the trees. What you have to do with daylilies and hostas both is every few years you go in and divide them. Every few years I can bring myself to go out and do something in the yard. It's like, well, who knows? Maybe I'll just take 2 weeks off and put on a pith helmet and work my way up to it and say, the general adventure, we're dividing hostas. It's not something you have to do every day. And that and ferns. I have a few ferns. Again, shade, loads and loads of shade. Ferns are easy care. I am perfectly contented if that is the only thing that is going on in my yard. I really am. Mostly because I am so intimidated by the mess that it is now. And I do mean I am intimidated. I look out the window and I think to myself, oh my God, this is awful. This has turned into the worst yard in the neighborhood. The neighbors are going to lynch me. I've got neighbors who come over and start taking care of my yard for me. That's how bad it is. They'll just say things like, well, I was doing a little weed whacking and I thought I'd come over. We've got another neighbor with a riding mower and he's just like, yeah, I just thought I'd take care of this stretch for you. So you're not holding up your end when that's what's going on. Now, I'm fortunate that I have kind neighbors, and that's what they do, instead of banging on my door and screaming at me, but I need to deal with this. So, when I get the plan, the landscape plan, I'm going to show it to you so that you can see what we're looking at and what, if any, changes we're going to make. And believe me, if we are going to make changes, it's going to be in favor of low maintenance. I already know that this is not going to be an inexpensive venture. I am thinking right now, in all likelihood, it's probably going to be somewhere in the range of $5,000. That is a lot of money. There's no two ways around it. Is it necessary? Well, I knew something was necessary as soon as the tree came down. I knew I would have, in the best of all possible worlds, I would have at least a $2,000 to $3,000 bill for the removal of the tree and some sort of regrading for where the tree was. But again, as you all know, my neighbors, 2 doors down, I have Mennonite neighbors. They came over with 2 of their congregations and out of the kindness of their hearts took away that tree for me. And my only hope is, I hope, because I sent them off with the wood, do whatever you please with it. They heat with wood. My only hope is that Mennonites stayed warm last winter as some sort of compensation for their kindness. I think this was wonderful. It was remarkably kind. I have very kind neighbors. So when you consider that going into the game, a tree falls, you know you have a massive expense. It wasn't used for the removal of the tree. It's going to be used for fixing up the yard. So that was sort of always in the plan. Tree fell. We got to start saving for landscaping. So good news, bad news sort of thing. I will keep you apprised of exactly what's going on, what happens when I talk to the different landscapers. And I thought we would sort of go through this together. I can show you what's happening on my end. And of course, many of you are used to this. Now, you didn't all grow up in the city. Some of you look at this and it's like 1/3 of an acre, and you're probably sitting back saying, yeah, my driveway's 1/3 of an acre, you stupid woman. Hey, I can use all the input I can get. Like I said, I look at this and I'm thinking, oh, we could raise cattle out here, because it just seems enormous to me. I'm not sure how to cope with it. So I'm welcoming the ideas and the feedback and the input. And I will let you know what's going on with the landscapers, what's going on with the plans, where we are with it. As I say, it's probably going to be expensive. That's okay, because, like I said, the minute the tree hit the schoolhouse roof, I started saving for it. So I have the money put aside to deal with this eventuality, even though I wasn't exactly sure how it was going to get spent. I was pretty gosh darn sure there was going to be a big price tag on the end of this one. So that's sort of the good news. And I guess the better news is I'm able to find people, landscapers, who know how to do this. All right, so this is where we are. You got a chance to see what's going on. And of course, you got a chance to hear from Audie, because while I was outside filming, Audie was screaming at me that he wanted to come out too. So that's where we're at. Have a great day. We may touch base on this again tomorrow. I'm going to look through the films and see if I have more film of this that you might want to see. And meantime, have a great day and give some thought to what you would do with that yard if you had to make the decisions. We'll see you tomorrow.